Jules, I really enjoyed talking to her. What an incredible story. Childhood trauma. I'm going to say mental issues as well with specifically her father. She has to leave with her mother at 6 years old. They just drive away. What happens there is quite shocking. But she's moved from house to house. Her mother remarries, and she's dealt with a lot of trauma and abuse, substance abuse. She eventually finds herself in high school where she's given certain powers. She's attractive young lady, and all of a sudden she's getting the attention that she never got before. But the counselor tells her to drop out of high school. So she takes certain steps there, and it's misfortune after misfortune. But she eventually she bottoms out 3 times and gets sober. How that happens is absolutely incredible. You're going to hear about that shortly. But she turned it completely around. She wrote a great book, The Making of a Woman, where she describes everything. She describes her life in 2 parts, and what she's done now. She's turned it all around. She bodybuilding, and she's winning national competitions, what she's done to turn that all around, and how her view on discipline, absolutely astounding, and what her motivation, how she views success. Just a great conversation, captivating discussion with Jules. And her website, by the way, that I forgot to mention in the podcast is themakingofawoman.com. Thanks for listening. Hi, I'm Joey Pinz. People ask me, how did I lose 130 pounds? The quick answer is always discipline. I started my business, wasn't paying attention to my health, was eating too much, drinking too much sweets. My daughter was born. Next thing I know, I'm pre-diabetic, I have hypertension. I knew something had to change. Discipline. I, like many of you, have faced many challenges in your career, in your family, in your life, in your faith. How did you attack them? How did you approach them? How did you solve them, hopefully? It all had to have some degree of discipline. I'm also asked, how did you found and start a tech business? And it lasted over 25 years. Discipline. I was committed to it, enjoyed technology, didn't enjoy some aspects of it, but knew it was necessary. Discipline. Our podcast mission, how do we use discipline to better ourselves and society? Join me, please, as I talk to interesting people and discuss how they use discipline in their family and their passion and their careers and how it helped them. Our podcast vision, growth through learning from others. Joey Pinz Discipline Conversations. It'll be light and serious. Join us, please. Thank you for consideration. Oh, Jules, thank you so much for your time today. I am so excited to talk to you. So the book that you wrote, it's for the girl in the back who thinks she's alone, and while writing the book and while continuing to talk about it, is it tough for you? Does it bring up all the experiences you had in both parts of your life?
You know, I've been fortunate enough to tell that story along with a lot of therapy. So it's almost like the emotion has been taken away from the events. So then I can tell it more clearly. There was a part, though, while writing the book where I had to get some details, which required me to get online and see the people from my past
Whoa.
in their presence. I have chills as I'm saying this now. It was very difficult to see these people that were once the adults in my life through the eyes of an adult, right? I'm no longer the kid. You no longer can hurt me. So that was a different experience that I hadn't had before writing the book.
Did you find that counselor who told you to drop out of high school?
I've never looked him up. I just didn't think, I just think if stuff comes around full circle, it has to. And yeah, I've had no interest in digging that up.
Why would you? Yeah. I can only think that that's not the only conversation he had similar to that, but, and your life just, Making of a Woman, of course, is the name of your book. And, you talk about being young and you're very young when your father has issues supporting. I'm going to assume mental illness. You're not quite sure. You're so young, but he does
Hmm.
commit suicide when you're 6.
He actually
Ah,
only attempted, and he was attempting that family suicide. And if you think, I mean, this is in the 70s. We don't have crap for resources.
right.
Alcoholism is, ridden throughout our family tree. Come on, he actually lived to the beautiful age, I think, of 70s. He was in his late 70s, but at the time, that was his best idea, like the best solution. But so I think, yes, there's got to be some mental illness there, just due to
Yeah.
circumstances.
Yeah, and the
Yeah.
pressure. And you describe it getting into the car with your mother and just leaving. It's 2 in the morning, and my goodness, Jules.
Yeah, it was dark. And I loved my daddy. I mean, that was like when I go back and go into that space, it was like he was my everything. We would go hunting together. Of course, I sat in the car, but I would do all these things with him. And I couldn't get enough of his time. And so when we were leaving him, I was like, why? And why aren't we going back? And so, yeah, there was a lot of that ripped apart feeling and not knowing what's coming. And yeah, that was a lot.
Did you ever blame yourself?
Mm-mm.
Good.
Not at that stage. Later on, when the trauma and the abuse surfaced and the way my mom handled it, from that point on, I thought I was the reason for it because she had a lot of troubles thereafter. And so that's really when I think that's when I took ownership of it, 15, 16 years old.
And then you describe your mother quickly remarried, and there was issues in that household, abuse and
Yeah.
trauma. I mean,
Yeah.
just the innocence of children kind of being swept into the issues of adults is horrible.
Yeah. And you have nothing to reference it to,
Right.
right? You're a little kid. And so this is my mom. And even though the bond wasn't extremely tight like my dad, this is what I do. I just go where she tells me to go. And, like she says, put your shoes on before you go outside. It's just the basics of this is how we live. And so swooping into this other family was overwhelming, because these are all new people with a whole different set of normal, right?
Mm.
Rules, the whole structure of the household. It wasn't warm and fuzzy. It wasn't loving. It was very much, like military. And that was scary for a little person like me at that time.
Yeah, absolutely. And then there was actual abuse there, and you were moving from area to
Yeah.
area, as we alluded to earlier. Eventually, you're in California. All of a sudden, you're receiving all this attention, and
Mm.
you started abuse. Some substance abuse started coming in as well.
That was a big pivotal point, though, because now all the things that had pretty much suppressed me, right? The abuse, the trauma, the sexual, all of that stuff. That's where it switched and it became my power. So at that point, here I am, I'm now receiving this attention that I'm actually able to maneuver
Mm.
people. And I'm starting to pick up that being promiscuous, there's a lot of power behind that. And that definitely resides in the rest of my story at that point, because now it's my currency
Mm.
and it's very powerful.
And you capitalize on it.
I totally did. Unknowingly,
Right.
unknowingly, it just felt good. Well, we're humans. We do things that feel good. Yeah.
It's amazing to me that the life you led until that point has just been so. I mean, you learn now as an adult how untypical and how traumatic it can be, but you still go through these stages. And I want to go to the point where you're in the back of a SUV, I believe, and with some friends, and you say, "I want to
Yes.
stop drinking," and they bring you to a meeting in 30 minutes.
oh my God. So this was like 19 years later.
Wow.
Right. So I'm 35 years old and I'm exhausted. I mean, the throes of alcohol
Mm.
and where it takes you and the people you find yourself hanging out with. And yes, there were other substances and the circumstances. It's unbelievable unless you've been in the shoes. And so, and like I said, like you said, like nonchalantly just said, I just wish I didn't drink so much. And those two people were in recovery.
Mm.
I had no idea. So this is where I get a glimpse of what like a higher power is. Because trust me, out there, those years before, I wasn't seeing anything of that sort, right? And so when these two girls brought me to that meeting, I mean, oh my gosh, Joe, it was terrible. It's terrible. I walked into this meeting and it's smoky and there's hackers and coffee's being brewed. And these are not my people. Because, as an alcoholic, one of the things that's quite comical is that we are the ones that will like look down at the people in the gutter who are also alcoholic and be like, like I was the martini sipping alcoholic, right? I don't have a phone. I don't have a roof over my head, but damn it, I am a high class drinking alcoholic. So yeah, walking in that room, my ego was like just infuriated. Like, what are we doing here? These are not our people. And I cried through the whole meeting.
Wow.
Just the whole meeting. And I don't know if there's any, we hear things like, did you surrender? Did you find your people? I'm like, no, none of the above. It was the ladies who gave me the hugs. It was the women who literally touched my body in a positive manner and gave me a hug and said, come back tomorrow. I had not been invited back anywhere for years. And they really meant it. And so I almost went back with being almost defiant. Like, oh, you want to see me come back? I'll show you what it's like for me to come back. Like, that was my mindset. That's how bitter I was. Even with people who are trying to help. You become so delusional, I think, of trust. People. You live a whole underground world that you rarely even come to the surface, I think, with alcoholism. So that was a big time in my life as well.
Certainly a turning point. But I want to go back to the kind of physical touch. Certainly you've experienced physical touch previous to that. What was it that those women gave that was different?
Remember, the touch before that first started in inappropriate touch from the second marriage. That was a very incestuous family. And then from there, I used my body for currency. So now I'm detached from it, pretty much disassociating. And so then and my mom became very cold at this stage of the journey. And so, I mean, she no longer gave me a kiss on the lips. I mean, there was just this whole, like I was dirty type of feeling. And so, so when I got in the rooms, and I mean, these women, they were like full wraparound body hugs, right? In the beginning was like, whoa. And then it was like, oh my God, can I have another one of those? And these, I mean, I remember this one big black woman, she's like, come on, girl, give it to me, and they just loved who I was inside, not the person on the outside. But yeah, that's what kept me coming back.
Do you feel that why did your mother get cold like that? Do you know? What was happening?
I think she was resentful. I think she too had trauma. I think she too used her body to maneuver. Hers was at a survival level, right? She had to put a roof over our head. And now she has two of us. I have another brother in the picture. And yeah, it was a time when she moved to the next apartment and she only got a 2-bedroom. Okay. I will not be living with you. Okay, I see how that's the way we communicated.
Wow.
So, yeah, a lot of confusion.
You describe in the book how you were forced to get a job at one point to help with the rent, but then you with the expenses, but then you figured out, wait a second, if I get my own money, I can go out on myself. I can do this myself. These are adult
Mm-hmm.
lessons you're learning as a preteen teen.
Mm-hmm. I think anger was a big driver for me. Thank goodness, because it didn't allow me to stay put. Um, so yes, after my mom, after I dropped out, the partying became crazy. My mom's like, you either A, have to go to a foster home, or B, go live with your stepfather. And that's where I went. Of course, I'm not going to go to the system. I'm going to go live with my stepfather. And that's where, I mean, he's the abuser, right? So when I got the job, because he's like, your mom's not paying child support. So I got a job, and I'm thinking to myself, why the fuck am I giving him my money? I'm going to move out. And so I moved out with one of my friends who also dropped out. Kept my McDonald's paycheck all to myself.
Did you? I remember when my daughter, she worked at one of those, and the first check she got, she couldn't believe how much the government took, and she was so
Right?
disappointed. Yeah, especially at that age. Did your mother know that he was abusive?
Mm-hmm. Yes, because all of that came out. And I think that's where the resentment started, right? Where she's realizing, like, I have spilled the beans. The authorities are involved. She can no longer hide the secrets. And now she has to get out on her own. So I guess, yeah. So I guess I looked like the one who caused the problems, or at least told on the problems. Yeah.
So going back to sobriety in the meetings, oftentimes people have problems with the higher calling. Did you?
Yes. I think because that's really at that depth of existence, I think there's not a lot of believing in a God or something bigger than you.
Mm,
Because again, it's like, why would you allow this to happen?
right.
The common questions. But really, what happens through the process of that program is that you see, you start separating things. And then once you start realizing what's yours and what's not, then and what you can fix, and then what happens is then you start to see where this higher power came in. But you can't see that when the ego is at large, or when all the resentments are clouding you. Right. So that's how, after, being in this program for like those first 3 years, I was able to look back and say, the women, that's what kept me coming back. But you can't see that sort of truth in those beginning days, weeks, months, sometimes years. Yeah. Yeah.
But then you start to break free. You're starting now to kind of blossom into the second part of your life. You get sober. You mentioned at one point you had to bottom out 3 times. 3 was the number for you.
It was the golden number, yes.
Yeah.
And that also gave me the understanding, again, after I got in and you look back at it, that was part of my story. One of the best things I think I've learned in this lifetime is that it's not good, it's not bad, it just is.
Mm.
And when you put that judgment template, when you put that on any sort of situation, you take the ownership away. You take the idea that your ego knows what I'm seeing. It's a bigger picture. We all know that.
Mm.
Right? So by doing that, then I was able to look back at those 3 bottoms. Because if I would have went into the rooms on the first bottom, or even the second, or even the third, I was still a fighter. I still thought I could do it. I just needed fill in the blank. So we call it the gift of desperation.
And then a great friend gave you a book that really changed everything as well.
I was fortunate to have quite a few. Which book are you referring to in
Four pillars.
particular?
Four pillars.
Yes, The Four Agreements.
Four agreements. Excuse me. Yeah.
Yes, by Don McGall.
Yeah.
That was the first spiritual book I had ever, first off, the first book I was able to read cover to cover because my attention span, right? But that really helped simplify, again, my part. Yeah, little things like that. And I love when you get those little nuggets. And now I'm very aware. Like if somebody suggests, read this book. I mean, I got a highlighter. I mean, I'm seeing this as like my source is like, girl, you got to read this book. Because nothing's by coincidence, right? Yeah.
Explain that. Nothing's by coincidence.
No, I don't want to get too fluffy here, but I keep in mind, I see source as the being that brought me through my entire journey, right? So there's a great level of loyalty and open-heartedness when I talk about my higher power. There's no organization to it. For me, it's a lot of energies. And I think, I lost my track. I'm sorry.
I asked about no coincidences.
Yes. Kind of like what I was saying, like the whole overall journey required those three bottoms, right? Nothing's by coincidence that I met this particular person or I read that book, right? So I just see like this whole thing is like mapped out exactly how it's supposed to be. Now, my will as a human is really what can take me off track. And I think that's why, the emphasis on meditation, sitting in stillness, removing all of the chaos, just really allows that ability to let that will or that ego just settle down, baby. We're good. We don't have to fight this one, right? And then I can actually receive some of the things that are around me.
You mentioned meditation and journaling as a game changer.
Yeah. In the beginning, I think most people who are getting sober have so much going on. It's called monkey mind. It's called chatter. I mean, we've all identified it somehow or some way. And I think that's part of the disease. And so that's something you practice in the very beginning. But of course, that's a tool that's worked for me for a long time. And so meditation for me, I was an outsider. I didn't bond with anybody. So I didn't have friends. So I had a lot of time on my hands when I got sober. And so then I dove into things, they're like, okay, meditation, I found in a yoga magazine, Deepak Chopra, his 21-day meditation challenge. And I listened to it every morning and every afternoon. It felt good. It told me that I wasn't a bad person. It told me, it kind of gave me an idea of what this entity is on a spiritual note. That was amazing. That's a beautiful concept to take in, especially when you're getting sober.
And all this was learned, Jules. I mean, we're never exposed to kind of this spirituality movement or thought as a child through all that trauma, correct?
Mm-mm. Oh, no. And I think that as an adult, even, there are people who, of course, we have people that don't ever tap into that side. It's part of their journey. It might not, it's not by coincidence. Maybe it's just not yet,
And then what's remarkable to me is that you keep moving forward. So in your 40s, you decide your celluloid is too much in your thighs. You're wearing Spanx under your jeans in the summer there in Dallas. So what do? You start bodybuilding and you're winning competitions. I mean, the trajectory is so impressive and peculiar.
Well, remember the will I talked about when I was drinking and drugging? It's amazing when you put that in a different direction, what you really can do with it.
By the way, you're 120 pounds, you profess. By the way, it's not like
Oh
I'm
no,
correct. Yeah.
I was just a little person,
Yes.
right? Yeah, I was an average 40-year-old looking woman, and again, I think it was that anger and that disgust, and I was like, damn it, I have fucking done so many things with this. That's it. I am going to this bodybuilding gym. Those women do not have a sliver of cellulite on their thighs,
Ah.
and I want what they have. And so I did. I went into one of those bodybuilding gyms. Oh my god, I have pictures. I am almost green in the face. I am so like she's like bring a two-piece bikini. I've never even worn a two-piece bikini at this stage of my life. So I have these big granny pants on and a sports bra. Oh my god, it was terrible. It was absolutely terrible. And so, but I stuck to it. I stuck to it. And she was the one actually who told me at the end of my time with her, not everybody is made for stage.
Mm.
And that in reflection, I realize the power of the word and how you can bring somebody up or how you can bring them down. And so that relationship dwindled, right? I moved on, things happened, I got with another coach and another coach. And then, this particular coach was, we did 20 weeks of prep. It was just rough. It was terrible. Probably the hardest thing on a physical note I've ever done with my body. And I placed third in this particular show. And I was like, I worked really hard for that. I think it should be a little more. And that's when one of the judges reached out to my coach and said, there's one show left. And I think if we put her in a different division, she'll do better. And that was 7 days later. So I had to learn a whole new routine and do it in high heels. All while in prep, which is a terrible feeling in general. And that's when I hit it. I just hit it out. I took a third, a second, and a first, and I qualified for nationals. So there again, the idea, like if I would have stayed home and give it the big, fuck it, you don't lose until you quit. Right? So I went to nationals and I took third at a national level, which is Canada, North America, and Mexico.
Wow.
Mm-hmm.
Incredible. And you still do it now?
I do. In fact, I'll be getting ready now again to gear up. We're about 16 weeks out now.
Wow.
Yeah, we're going to do it all again.
And it's a combination of weightlifting, of diet, and cardio.
Cardio will play a part in it towards the end a little bit more, because in the more when you're still building the muscle, you need that fuel. You need to have that extra on board. But yeah, you'll strip that off once it gets close to stage time.
And again, you knew no one in the bodybuilding industry, correct?
Oh yeah, no.
You just wanted to tackle one problem, and this was the solution.
I did, and it was just I was looking at, like I said, my thighs,
right?
And again, that's kind of like this whole source thing. It's kind of like, wait a minute, source is like, you just look here at the meal plan, almost like the cat and the little red dot. You focus on the red dot, Jules. And voila! I was like, holy crap! I qualified for nationals. I mean, that's how it was. Yeah.
But you've said before that alcohol was never the problem. It was the solution. And
it was.
It seems to be like you see this one problem, celluloid, and here's the solution, and you go tackle it. Do you approach like writing this book? It was released, I believe, October of 2021. When did you decide what was the problem there, and how was that the solution?
In regard to the bodybuilding?
No, writing the book. I suppose.
Yes, writing the book. That is one of those. Do you ever have it where this thought just kind of keeps popping in your mind? People will say something like, girl, you need to write a book. Like I had a lot of that over the course of my sobriety. But I mean, let's face it, when you tell a story in the rooms of recovery compared to a story over a dinner party, they're going to be two different stories, two different degrees, right? We live a different life. So people in the rooms of recovery are like, no big deal. Okay, you danced on tabletops, right? Where other people would be mortified. And so, but when it got to the point where I was like, well, you know what? Maybe I'll try to put my timeline together, which required me pulling out my taxes because I did not have not a recollection on that. And so piece by piece, and then COVID happened. And that is just where, again, when I'm presented with things, I take a step back. Like, what is this for? And then kind of feel inside. Is this something that's pulling me? Or, or am I trying to like pull it towards me, or is it pushing? Or, I really tap inward. And then this presented itself, my interaction with Marlena, it's like, we totally connected. Right. And so then everything lined up and boom, that book was written in 6 months.
Wow.
Right. So yeah, it wasn't, I knew it had to be written because I kind of held the cure for cancer. Right. It's like, I can't hold this in. That would be totally unfair of me. I need to be able to share so other people can realize that they're not alone.
One of the traits I believe in a remarkable person, Jules, because there's just so many people that go through this. I'm not saying similar, but go through trauma and just kind of hold to themselves. They don't want to rediscover it. They don't want to open it up. They don't want to write a book. They don't want to talk about it with others. But you looked at it as a teaching, as a learning lesson for others.
Later on down the road.
Right.
Because those 19 years I drank and drugged, I had no intentions of ever talking about it again. Yeah. So I think that's as we get older, we get wiser. I was fortunate enough to be able to work through resentments and clear my side up of things, fix the wrongs I'd done. These are big gifts to be able to like clear your conscience. A lot of people don't have that. A lot of people never see the rooms of recovery. Right? So I had those gifts, which ultimately made this even possible.
Did you forewarn friends, family that might not have been shown in particularly positive light of what was happening, what was going to be released in this book?
Such a good question, because that's a big deal when you start opening up things of the past. My thoughts on that was, this is my truth. And so with it being my truth, it doesn't matter. Like this is me and that's you, right? Of course, I didn't put out terrible details, but I definitely got the gist across. Because that was something I had to think about is like, well, what if somebody's offended that I, told the truth? That's not my problem. If they're offended, that's not my problem, right? Fix that. Do your work. And, we tried with changing the names, the location of things. We did the best we could, but I had to own it. And I had to own it, the idea that may come up. But again, that's not my side of the street. I told it with the most honest approach that I know how.
Did you get pushback?
My family's so disconnected from me. Yeah. So I don't even know if they probably did with the, the social media, but I would doubt that anybody actually even bought the book.
And when it was completed, what was your sense? Was there just kind of weight being released from your shoulders? I've done this now. Others can learn. What was that sense like?
The ego got super big.
Wow.
We're going to make a movie. Just like, no, we're not. Settle down. It was a really big project. overall with editing and all of the different, entities to putting a book together. But then we did a book launch party during COVID, which was very exciting. We brought on a PR, and so we just were really, really able to bring it up into light. I struggled with it for a while, like, okay, well, what's next? What's next? And people are like, there's nothing next. Maybe this is it. Like, and so when he said, you're immortal now, you will forever live because that book is written. And so, and you and I pick up books from 10, 15 years ago. This could be what happens. So I've done my part. And I have little things that flare up every once in a while. Somebody had asked, especially women in their 40s, like, girl, you need to write another book. Like, I need to know, how did you keep this going? And, but again, I just haven't been pulled to do that yet.
And your process of writing, was it pen to paper? Was it on a computer? Was it early in the morning?
It was telling my story. So Marlena is the one who would take in all my information. And then she would ask the questions because of the similarities we had. She could put words, literally words, to the emotions I was trying to share. Because one of the things with this book is we already have enough trauma going on in the world. I have no intentions of sprinkling any more out there, right? But what I wanted more than anything is for humans to connect. That's really where we find healing, right? Just like in the rooms of recovery. There's where the physical connections, I'm sure hours of ends of listening to me connections. So that's what I wanted with this book. So when I say the word like fear, you totally know what that feels like, right? And so we based this book off of the emotions of the event. And I think I've gotten really good feedback on that. I've had, surprisingly, even men write to me saying, that's why my wife does this. It makes sense to me now. I'm thinking, holy sheesh, I had no idea men would be reading this book. It even says woman on the cover. But yeah.
I remember back when there was magazines in doctors' offices, and when I would go to the doctor, dentist, whatever, I would always gravitate to the women's magazines because the men's magazine, I'm a man. I already know what men think.
Yes.
I was always interested in what women think. So I was always gravitated towards that.
That's awesome.
That's just me.
Yes.
So on the podcast, we talk about discipline a lot. I always bring it up. I lost a lot of weight. I gained a bunch of weight. Doctor said you're not going to see your daughter graduate. And so I did what I had to do, and I lost the weight. And people ask me how. I just say discipline. I got focused. I got discipline. Fascinating to me, Jules, with your youth, being exposed to a military stepfather who has a very different view on discipline, being moved from location to location, all through the abuse. How does discipline play a role in your life now?
Well, first off, when I first left my family, I swore I was never going to have routine again. In the beginning, I could tell you step by step what my stepfather was going to do when he came home from work. That's how rigid he was. But then my mom also taught me organization and discipline brought safety, a feeling of safety. Right. So that was kind of ingrained in me. And now I think that's part of my being, even if I wanted it or not. I think it's part of my being. There are days, come on, I'm human, where I'm like, oh my God, like days like today, it's an ice storm out there. I don't want to go outside at all, and so I again, pick up tools, for instance, like getting ready for that show. There's no describing what it feels like to be going through prep, right? You're depleted, you're exhausted, your carbohydrates are low. You're like just dragging yourself some days. But what it is I surround myself with like-minded people who will pull me up no matter what. I also listen because, I'm like a sponge, right? We talked about the power of the word. So I will listen to podcasts or anything to do with like motivation, and almost like the lion type of motivation when I'm up on that Stairmaster, right? So things that will just keep going in my mind, so my mind doesn't start going off in different directions. I also put things on the back of my door. So when I would leave in the morning, I put pictures of myself up there. I would put sayings up there. One of them said, I go on the days I don't want to go. I just filled my entire environment. So I would not, it was like fail proof. I couldn't do it. And so, and people would be, like I said, checking in on me. And so that's how I do discipline, because I'm human and I'm going to falter. And I think as you practice more and more, you take the feeling out of it again, and you've already made the decision. Now you just have to do it.
It's fascinating to me what you originally said, that you equate kind of discipline with routine, and you were so rebellious to it because there was an abuser involved, but then your mother always had it as organization equals safety. So those are very opposing, definitions of the same word. Very interesting take on that, given your background and your life. You mentioned two big inspirations of Sophia Loren and Oprah.
Oh, God. Have you ever read Oprah's book? I know it was like an itty bitty one, probably like 15 years ago.
Yeah. Incredible.
Holy crap. Makes my story look like a comic book almost. It's unbelievable. And so I just honor her. I'm like a loss for words. I would never even be able to sit in her presence because I'd be like, I don't even know what to say to you. Where to begin? Yeah. And Sophia Loren, she just has poise. She's sexy. She walks in, she owns the room. That's Jules.
You said that, Jules. You kind of sprouted up a bit, just like
that's right. Yeah.
Jules,
yeah.
What motivates you?
What motivates me? It used to be money, because money would give me a chance to get away from the bad things in my life. It also gave me control and a sense of power. And then I realized after having all that, it wasn't fulfilling. And now it's almost like going backwards in life. Like when you're in college and you all have like, I don't know, $3 to your name, and you throw it all in and you buy a pizza, and that camaraderie is what you remember most about, college. That's what I seek today. I seek people who think like I do. That's where my value is. Like, it's no longer in my checkbook. It's amongst the people who I surround myself with. And those are my motivators. Just like I was saying, if I have a goal in mind, they're right there with me.
Are you going to write another book?
I would love to. I got a lot more to share. There's parts of one thing with my journey is I've realized, again, looking back, that the things that were seen as bad have now actually become my strengths. Right? So right in that first, I think it's like even the first page, it starts off with some pretty heavy words, like almost like you're getting hit by a 2x4. But now when I look at those words and flip it over to a positive, okay, so like the word slut. Now as an adult, I know what it's like to want sexual liberation without judgment, right? There are a lot of people in my shoes that don't have my story who seek that, right? So a lot of the areas, and this is where it becomes really, I guess these are my challenging parts, because this is me coming to the surface to bring that topic up, right? And some of those topics are not of the norm. I've heard fantasies, for instance, that are not of the norm. but they're people and they want their story told too. Right. So, and I also have to be mindful of the people who are in my life today. So I believe that's part of the reason why I'm kind of getting the no, it's not a no, it's not yet. Because I have people in my life right now that may be affected by it if I were to write the book right now.
Hmm.
Yeah.
You mentioned in the book there's 10, 12 words that, you were called, and now you view them completely different. Slut was one of them,
Mm-hmm.
and how you gain kind of strength from them.
Yeah. Like own it.
Now you own it now.
Mm-hmm.
Take it back. What was once an insult and caused harm, you've taken control of it, and it's doing perhaps the opposite.
Absolutely. And it's semantics.
Mm.
It's the power behind the word, and as I said earlier, it's like that can, I mean, obviously it can knock somebody down or bring them up. And again, it's like there are other women that I've met in my journey who have this same, I want some liberation. I want to explore. I want, well, who do they go to talk to? Again, people want to connect with people of like-mindedness, where they feel safe, where they're empowered. That's
Yeah.
why I
Sorry.
go ahead.
Please, like-mindedness, you were saying.
Yeah. And that's, I think, why I've connected with so many women out there. Is that why? That's that reason.
And like-mindedness doesn't necessarily mean you have the same beliefs, but perhaps you have an open-mindedness to other things as well.
Mm-hmm.
Take
Very true. Yeah. Because say, for instance, like in the kink community, right? So everybody, this is an expression of self, right? We're all a soul. Some people tattoo their bodies. Some people color their hair pink. I mean, we drive different cars. I mean, why wouldn't our sexuality be different, right? And so, but it's such a taboo. And without expressing 100% of your being, it's going to come out sideways. And that's why we have some of the problems we have, because people can't just openly express. Now, I'm not suggesting we do this at, that McDonald's I worked at, how many years ago. There's a time and place for things. But to be able to, in a sense, hold space for these folks and let them share, talk about it, tell me about it. Oh, that's super interesting. How does that work? Oh my God. It totally changes the energy of that part of them.
I find that as I get older, I have more questions than I have answers. So when I hear people in these communities that I'm completely unfamiliar with, I get so excited because I want to learn about it. I want to
Yeah.
understand it. Why does it appeal to you? What is it that I just don't know anything about it. I'm not here to judge. I just want to learn and try to understand. And perhaps, just perhaps, Jules, anybody listening would feel the same way and just learn a little bit more.
Mm-hmm. That open-mindedness, I think, is key, right? And again, the judgment, because my ego is what tells me this is right or wrong.
Mm.
So if going in there saying, there's no judgment whatsoever here. I'm just going to take in information, right? And just take it in. This community, the one that I've referenced to, is absolutely gigantic around the world. I mean, but we can only express it in certain areas. But I think it's super fascinating. And I love the idea that it's an expression. It's an expression of self. I know how it feels to have to, wear the masks and be the chameleon and change for the person that I'm dating. But to actually just be 100% yourself, oh my gosh, that's just exciting to hear.
It is.
Yeah.
And once that safe zone is determined, it's liberating.
Yeah. Yep. And just like I went into the rooms of recovery, like I would go in and I knew that I was welcome.
Mm.
I was never going to be kicked out of there. No matter what I said or did or revealed, that door was always open for me.
Jules, how do you measure success?
Peace. Personally, it's peace for me because I've been super broke on the other side of that, where my mind is telling me to make decisions that aren't the best decisions. I'm in survival mode. I'm just at a high vibration is what I can think of. I'm just like manic almost because I'm in fear and I got to get out of what I'm in and bring that all the way over to the other side of the spectrum where you are now the power source of just calmness. I love to be around people like that. And so, yeah, just bringing a little peace to the world. Slow down on the road a little bit. Like, let that person in. I'm not always like that. I'll tell that. I'll put that out there right now. I am not some like little fluffy little guru.
Right.
I do drive a 911. Let's be honest here. But really, it's my husband's 911. But anyway, but you know what I'm saying? Like try to keep reaching that goal. Because like I said, there's already enough out there.
Mm. Yeah, and don't necessarily dig in when there's an opposing view. Perhaps just both listen and agree to disagree and move on. Only if just the general society would accept this notion.
Do you think that's because we have gotten older?
Perhaps,
Yeah.
perhaps. Yeah. This
We've
is the
we've
way it
been
is.
told we've
Yeah.
been told, that's an interesting way to put it. You can't tell an 18-year-old
No, 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 no.
that.
Yeah. Well, if that works for you, yeah, that kind of.
Yeah, yeah. No, those words are not in an 18-year-old's mind.
Oh, well, Jules, thank you so much for your time today. The experiences that you've had and writing this book and opening it up to others so that they can learn. And that girl in the back of the room who thinks she's all alone, hopefully it helps her. It's just a sign to me of a remarkable person. I want to thank you for your time. Thank you for the book. And next time in Dallas, we'll have to go down there, Deep Elm, and get a cup of coffee.
Yes, I would love that. I would love it. And I'm really glad you have this platform. It helps. It helps me do what I want to do or what is supposed to be done. And I'm grateful for that. So thank you for all the work you do behind the scenes to make this possible.
Jules, you be well. Thank you so much for your time today.
You're welcome. Thank you.
Thank you for listening and or viewing Joey Pinz Discipline Conversations. Please share this episode with one or two of your friends who you think may benefit from the episode. Our website, www.joeypins.com. There you'll find lots of resources and you could join our mailing list. Please follow us on all our social media, Instagram, Twitter, and Facebook. Podcast information, the video version of our podcast is on YouTube. Please subscribe. Audio is on all major podcasting platforms. Please follow them. And if you like it, please consider giving 5-star rating. Would really appreciate that. Would you like to financially support the podcast? You can go to our Patreon site. Consider $5, $10, or $20 a month. There's all kind of plans that we have there. There's like a one-time payment. What is this podcast episode worth to you? $25, $50, $100, $500, $1,000, $5,000. You be the judge. You can go to our PayPal account to do that as well. Thank you again for listening or watching Joey Pinz Discipline Conversations.